Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. Two, because I'm a fan of punk music. And three, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Mandisa Makubalo, who is a startup founder, a top 100 global CX thought leader, and a book author. And I'm speaking to her all the way down in South Africa. Hey, Mandisa, how are you doing?
Hey, hey, Adrian. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm good. Thank you. And yourself?
I am splendid, Mandisa. I'm splendid. So, Mandisa, for the listeners that are not familiar with you and your work, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do?
So I'm talking to you today in the beautiful township of Gugulethu, which is where I grew up. It's the English description of Gugulethu means our pride. So it's a township out in Cape Town. I'm in the Western Cape province, where we have the beautiful Table Mountain. And I'm an independent customer experience consultant. Really, my goal as a consultant is to use customer experience as a tool to drive economic development in the townships of South Africa, specifically in Cape Town. So that's really the heart behind what I do. And I must say, I'm the first 100% Black woman-owned CX consultancy in the country. So that's also exciting for me.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I want to dig. There's so many things you talked about, kind of that are mentioned there. I mean, because I know of you via the women in CX community, and I've heard lots about you. And big shout out to everybody in the Wix community, and in particular, kind of like Claire Muscat, who is kind of leading the effort and setting it all up, because she made me aware of kind of you. So big shout out to them. But I was inspired to reach out to you directly to invite you onto the kind of podcast, because I saw a post that you put on LinkedIn. Let me just check. It was about 4 weeks ago at the time of recording.
Yes.
And you kind of told a story about what you're up to. And you mentioned this kind of consulting services, particularly in the townships and stuff. And I really wanted to ask you to come on the podcast and to tell us the story, and tell us your story and how you got to here and kind of what you're focused on kind of like now, because I think it's just tremendous and it's different and it's ace. And I wanted to shine a spotlight on it. So kind of tell us about your story and how you got here and what you're focused on now, Mandisa.
Okay, so I have over 2 decades of experience in customer environments. Mm-hmm. I started off as a contact center agent in the call center, and I grew into a process specialist. I grew to become a team leader. I grew to become a call center manager. Mm-hmm. Then I was appointed into service delivery manager for a BPO contact center that had its offices and its headquarters in the UK. It's a company called Carphone Warehouse. Talk.
Okay.
So I got exposed to dealing with international brands as a service delivery manager. At the time, I was looking after about the 600-seater contact center. And from that position, I then moved into a consulting space where I was appointed to design contact center solutions. So I would be designing the entire program from the technology, the people, the business processes, mapping all of that, and just literally given a floor with nothing on the floor. And I would have to set up an 85-seater contact center, a national one, for a company in the waste management space. So from starting off as a call center agent, last position to being in a space where I get to define and lead and design and deliver contact center solutions. I've had to travel internationally, where I went to Kuala Lumpur to help Petronas in the petrochemical space to set up their contact center solution, which was a phenomenal opportunity for me. So I've always been in customer environments. And I also studied in the marketing and sales management space, where I did quite well in consumer behavior. I did quite well in sales management. I did quite well in personal selling. And also I did quite well in mercantile law. So I guess a transition into the customer experience space was quite seamless for me because I've always been in customer environments. And at the time, customer experience was not even known in South Africa. It was more about customer services. So being in the customer environment has always been something that I've done all my life. So moving into customer experience was quite a seamless transition for me. And that's when I then set up this consultancy. And really what I do see is, because I'm positioned in the townships, there's a massive experience divide with what you find in the townships and what you would find in the city. So maybe a bit of background for your listeners. A township,
okay, please.
Is, back in before Nelson Mandela was a president, there was an apartheid system that separated people according to their race. So we had Black people, South Africans living in the townships, and then you have white South Africans living in the city. So you will still have that at the moment. And what you find is that in the townships, the experience is not the same as what you would get in the city. As a result, even for me today, when I need to go buy groceries, I have to drive to town because I cannot go and buy groceries and get the same experience as I would get in the city. You look at the store layout, the type of products these retailers will bring into the township, the state of the shopping center itself. You don't have the same state-of-art shopping centers in the township as what you would have in the city. Even with the banking solutions, some banks in the townships, you would find they don't even have Wi-Fi. Sometimes there's not even aircon in the bank. When you go to the city, it's a completely different setup. So that for me is a problem because we have all of these products and solutions being integrated into the township economy, but the experience divide is getting bigger and bigger by the day. And my goal and what I'm really about is to, when these organizations integrate their solutions into the township, I am that go-to person for you. If you want to understand the dynamics and the nuances of the township customer, I'm that person for you. That is why I started the State of CX report, which is a report that I've broken down into sector and industry. And I publish that just once every 6 months. I did the first one last year, focusing on the financial services sector, because they have the biggest footprint in the township.
I mean, it's great. I mean, I love it. I mean, I think you're highlighting such an important issue that doesn't just affect South Africa and the townships. It affects kind of countries around the world, and how many big businesses, particularly big businesses, operate and how they operate differently depending on different areas and their kind of like their demographic and socioeconomic kind of mix and kind of where they're located and so on and so forth. And so it's a really kind of I think it's a really important thing that you're doing is highlighting those differences and trying to, as you say, navigate and kind of like address those differences when brands are coming in to allow them to.
And maybe just to add, Adrian, so when the whole economic development tool comes in, is that a lot of township-based businesses, I find that the thinking of the business owner, and a lot of them, it's quite small, it is limited to, it's built around my current conditions. So no thinking outside of that, and I also sometimes get asked to sit in conversations where there are big corporates saying that we are looking for township-based businesses to provide us certain products, and we're not finding them. And I realized that there was a gap. So you have, on the one end of the spectrum, you have this supply, this big company saying that we're looking for a supplier of X. We're looking for a supplier to provide us printed bathrobes and bath sheets. On the one end of the spectrum, you have a township-based business that says, but I'm not able to penetrate these big supply chains. There's a problem.
Yeah.
So how do we then make them visible? How do we then build them in a way that's more sustainable? But what you find is that there's a huge focus on the product. I've got 20 customers, I'm selling a product, I'm getting money. And to them, that's what business is about. And no thinking beyond that. So where CX comes in as a tool is to really help them understand and build good customer understanding and how that can be used to scale the business and also to sustain, because a lot of them fail in the first 5 years because it's all about sales and how much can I get from this customer. So that's what I'm trying to do through economic development, is to say, let us have sustainable and lasting township-based businesses.
Yeah. No, because when we were setting up this interview, and you mentioned it there, you said you were intent on using CX as an economic development tool. And then when you said that initially, I mean, I was kind of blown away by that, because I have if I go think about my own work journey, I mean, I'm a trained economist, and I did some work in economic development. I used to work in Egypt in the early kind of 90s, well, throughout the 90s, in and out of Egypt throughout the 90s.
One thing, what a transition from being an economist to CX.
Well, kind of, it's like, well, when you said it as CX as an economic development tool, I was like, what? I was like, wow, that's cool. Because you're absolutely right. Is sometimes we equate great experience and great service with almost how much you pay for something, or the size of a business and things. And so what I wanted to do was just really kind of dig into this idea as a CX as an economic development tool, because it should be for all businesses of all sizes and all sectors, and therefore all kind of customers. And there's a powerful thing. And you're also talking about small businesses. So I wanted to really understand kind of like, how are you using this CX as an economic development tool? And we may be at risk of repeating ourselves kind of here. And I don't care, because it's worth repeating. So can you explain to me in detail, specifically, what do you mean by CX as an economic development tool? And also why the focus on small business?
So let me tell you this. This morning, I had a phone call from an entrepreneur that I had worked with quite a while back. He actually calls me the CX queen. They say, here's a customer experience lady when they see me. So I've had a lot of interesting conversations with him, because every time we come to the office, he says, Mandisa, I think what you do is fascinating. I think what you do needs to be known by a lot of us. And I want to just sit with you and talk with you. And he started off running a sunglass business where he was selling sunglasses from the boot of his car. And the brand is called Izaza Eyewear. Izaza stands for sunglasses, but it's that's the vernac way of saying it. So it's called Izaza Eyewear. And he started off selling sunglasses at the back of his car. So the one day he comes to the office and I say to him, can I see your sunglasses? And then he gives me a pair. And I try a few out and I ask him, look, what's the price? And then I realized that it's got quite a flat pricing model. So the price is the same for all of these sunglasses. And then I took him through to understand whether or not he understands his customers and the market and the opportunities that are there for him. And then I said to him, what sunglasses do for me as a professional business owner, and what sunglasses do for my daughter who's in university, and what sunglasses do for my mother who's a 75-year-old woman, it's three different things. And it requires an understanding of these different personas. We call them personas.
Uh-huh.
So I sat with him and I taught him about the importance of customer understanding, but I really brought it down to his level of business and his level of understanding. And this morning he phones to say to me, Mandisa, this morning I actually thought of you when I woke up. I want to come sit down with you and thank you, because as a result of you helping me understand the importance of customer understanding, we are now opening up our second brick and mortar store. You helped me to break into a market that I didn't even know existed through customer experience. Now that's fantastic. Nice. You know, you talk about economic development. Those are the stories I'm talking about. You know, he's now been able to charge his customers different prices based on the value and what it is that these sunglasses do for them. His first store is based in Long Street in the city. He's opening up a second one right now at Table Bay. And he's just scaling his business. And as a result of that, there are more and more people that are getting jobs. So there's job opportunities that are coming from just simply investing in customer understanding. You know, so that's a typical example of what I mean when I say I work with small businesses to teach them really what does CX look like for them. I host workshops for them quarterly. I have one coming up now on the 8th of March, but this one is specifically for women. And I'm really saying to them, let us look at your salon that is operated in a steel container. It's fantastic. What is happening in that container? What are the touch points in that container? What are the interaction points? Even before a customer discovers, when they go to discover you, what does that do? You even know when they hear about you and what experience comes along with that, and the importance and how that leads to them coming into your space. You know, I know the one time I had a lady that she's a Christian, and she was saying to me that in her salon she plays gospel music. So I said to her, remember, not all of your customers are Christian, and there's nothing wrong about being a Christian, you know, but be careful that you don't impose yourself on your customers, because they're the ones you actually have a business as a result of the need that exists in them. So don't make it hard for them to come and spend their money with you. You know, seek to understand from them, create a shoebox. You know, that's how you gather data. When they come, get into the habit of writing their name, their surname, ask for their telephone number, build a database of your customers already, so that we can sit together in the next session. You come along with this whole list that's in your book. We can now group these customers into different personas. And you can then understand what value they're looking for, what are their pain points, what are their needs. And as a result, some of them have even moved to open up salons from a steel container to moving into the local shopping center. So that's the economic development we're talking about. It's purely because they haven't done anything that's big. They simply went and say, who's my customer? You know, how are they experiencing my brand? You know, removing yourself. I always say as an entrepreneur, you have to cut the umbilical cord. So you're very attached to your brand. Now remove yourself and realize that this ain't about you, it's about your customer. And what does that really look like? And those are the kind of principles we would sit together and do journey mapping with them. We really just hone in, but we apply practicality that is specific to their businesses, so that it doesn't sound overwhelming when you say data gathering. You know, I don't have the right tools, Mandisa, for data gathering. No, you have a shoebox. Let's use a shoebox and collect data and put the data in the shoebox. And then how do you then take the data that's in that shoebox, analyze it to drive improvements and to improve the experience of your customer? through that information, what does that look like? And I just help them to really understand how to analyze the data, how to take actions from the data that they receive that is in the shoebox, which is exactly the same as what these big corporates are collecting through technology, but just for you using the shoebox, it doesn't mean it's less of data.
No, absolutely. I mean, so there's two things I wanted to, it struck me. One is a question. The other thing about, you talked about the again, the economic development, CX is economic development tool, because you talked about allowing small businesses to grow and create jobs. And I think it's important to point out that many people in the business kind of like press or, the industry or the commentariat or whatever, they invariably talk about large businesses and large brands. Now, the problem is, if you think about the population of businesses in most kind of countries, probably about 5-10% of them are large businesses, and the rest of them are small kind of businesses, or much smaller businesses, and many of them are micro businesses. So you end up with this kind of quite a flat pyramid sort of thing.
Yeah.
And now, while the kind of big businesses may employ a higher relative proportion of the kind of people than smaller businesses do, we have to remember that big businesses were once small businesses, and they've grown. And actually, small businesses are a job and income creation engine, and we need to kind of think about that. But on the back of that, I also kind of know that, having worked with some of these smaller type of businesses as well, I know that many small entrepreneurs get into business because of they've spotted an opportunity, or they have a passion for something, or they have a skill in a particular area, and they just get into it in order to try and just make a living and start their own business and be in control of their own destiny, or whatever the reason might be. And so they're not necessarily au fait with, business language and marketing terminology and experience terminology and things. And so what I wanted to understand is, because I remember early in my career, I got tripped up with this, where you go and talk to people and you use all sorts of tools and jargon and things, and people look at you kind of like as if you're some alien from some distant planet somewhere. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm sure you've seen that sort of those looks before, but then, because you're talking about personas and journey maps and things, but those are they're not necessarily very technical, but they are very specific to the whole experience domain. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, like, how have you gone about translating the CX tools and jargon into a local context? Because it seems to be that bridge is kind of where you kind of is a bridge towards impact, as it were.
Yes. So I'd say that the nice thing for me is that I deliver all my workshops in my home language. So I use isiXhosa, which is my home language.
Okay.
Because all of the audience that I will be engaging with is from within the township, and we all speak the same language. So that's the first differentiator, and I would say an advantage that I had is that I'm able to deliver in a language that's understandable to them. So as much as I would say persona, but when I work with them, I use more visuals. But those visuals, it's not for me to put up some mapping tool from Expressia perhaps, or some overwhelming journey mapping tool. We actually have a room filled with white flip charts and pens. So we draw things, because I find that when you deliver in that method and that style, it is more understandable, and they are able to connect with the message more than it was going to be if I have a laptop and a screen up there. That's already overwhelming, and I'm standing in front. That creates a disconnect, because as a people, we are very community oriented. So the workshops that we have, it's more like a round table setup. I sit amongst them and we just start talking, and we're planning and we're writing. and everybody's excited and people laugh at how the other one draws. So it's kind of very interactive. So the delivery method I find is what actually helped me, that when I'm sitting with them, I am one of them, because I'm also a small business owner. I'm one of them, and I'm able to connect the message in that manner than for me to stand in front as an independent consultant using all of these jargon, and yet I'm telling them to get into a space where they understand their customers, but my delivery method and format doesn't demonstrate an understanding of them. So I need to sit down and really spend some time and analyze and connect with my audience. And I find that is a much more effective approach of delivery.
Yes. It reminds me, you know what it reminds me of? There's an old saying that says, it's a poor craftsman or craftswoman that blames their tools.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I think that's kind of what you're showing, is that you are the craftswoman, but you're taking the tools and you're not letting the tools, you're applying the tools and the knowledge that comes from the understanding of the tools to their best use in the context that you kind of find yourself in and where you want to apply them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of great. I think there's lessons there for all of us in terms of, there is too much jargon out there, but actually if your heart and if your intent is just to improve outcomes and help people grow their kind of businesses and improve their kind of their situation and improve the lives of customers, then it's about how you translate those things into local and relative kind of contexts and into actions that drives this sort of thing. So I think it's just that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Mandisa, and to share your story, because I think it's a really important thing, because too many people I see kind of like, and we hear about all these different customer experience kind of transformation, digital transformation programs and things, and they're failing. Yeah. And I think sometimes it feels like, and I suspect that many of these things happen because they don't take people with them, and they speak to them almost in a language that they almost have to try and translate or understand, or they feel lost, as it were, rather than actually making it make sense for them. So that's why I think it's a really good point.
Another thing that I found works for me a lot is I support local small businesses. And when there's an opportunity to applaud, I use that. When there's an opportunity to educate, I educate. So I'll order lunch, perhaps, and they'll bring to the office. And they might have maybe forgotten to bring me some serviettes, or the guy is not dressed in a presentable manner. I'll educate, but in a very fun manner, without judging at all, but I will educate. And I know that when I order again from them, I give them another chance. When they come in the office with my order, you can see that they've made it, there's a difference. So educating, continuously educating without the need to judge and put yourself higher than anybody else, but to really be intentional about educating and also applauding good behavior. Applaud, and that works.
I'll tell you what, let's get to the applause bit, because that's kind of what I'm really kind of interested in as well, is highlighting now. I know you talked about the gentleman that was selling sunglasses out the back of his car, and then you talked to you, and then he's now opened up his second store, and then you talked about the lady that was running a salon that was operating out of a steel container. I mean, do you have other stories that you can share about, people that you've talked to and people that you've helped along the way, and how it's impacted them and how they're benefiting with the application of these insights? Because I think for me, that's the important bit, because it's all about impact, right?
So in 2020, I was appointed as part of a group of expert advisors. So there was a township acceleration program that was set up with about 60 entrepreneurs. And I was appointed to bring my CX skills to help entrepreneurs, but they were across the country. So I got to work with about 20 different entrepreneurs across South Africa, different provinces. And those were at different stages. Some were in seed funding, some startup, some scaling, some at maturity stage, some were really looking for funding. And I got to use my consulting skills. So if the issue is around creating a business model and they don't have a business model, they're just operating every single day. So I took them on a journey, but then I wouldn't mention the word CX in those consultations. But at the end of everything, I would say to them, this is what CX looks like. But I deliberately avoided to bring in CX as a word through those conversations because I didn't want to lose you. I remember one guy saying to me, Mandisa, I'm at a stage right now where there's so much work to be done. I want to bring more people into the business. I don't know where to start. I said to him, the only reason why you should bring more staff into your business is if you want to strengthen your value proposition and serve your customers better. You don't bring people into the company because now there's a lot of admin to be done. Because then what happened to that skill set when the admin is not there? So let's look at your offering. So we went back and I said to him, everything that you do must be informed by the customer. If you're looking to scale, it must be because you're responding to a customer need. And how do you assess that? So I took him back and we worked right back into his vision, to the value proposition. We built a customer experience strategy for him. And then we connected everything to his business goals, customer goals. And then I said to him, based on what we've done, do you think that you need so much people? And it turned out it wasn't the case. But it was just that he was looking at things from a different perspective. So I, shared the knowledge about the fact that the customer should lead your decision-making because you're in business, first of all, because of the customer. Another one, they built an education platform, which is called the Nandi app. And it's a platform that's used for young children to connect them to a trained advisor. And they will work on things like mathematics, biology, and those difficult subjects, like physical science as well. They were also looking for funding. And we worked together. And at the end of the program, they were able to secure over just under $10,000 of funding, seed funding for the platform. But again, with them, their approach was to use CX as a tool to help them manage and run their business, and also incorporating the principles of employee experience as well at the same time. Huh. And that knowledge was brought throughout that process that we worked together. And the one company, they had built they had a platform that was an online publishing platform. Publishing is an online publishing platform. That's the one business. And I'm trying to think of all of them. It was quite a lot. It was about 20 of them.
No, maybe put you on the spot a little bit there, but there's no need to list that all 20, but you're giving people a picture of the kind of the impact that you're kind of having, and also for many people that are operating in that experience sort of space, is that actually there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
All at the whole spectrum of business sizes and across different sectors.
Yes.
And I think what I thought was fascinating and laudable and brilliant was the fact that you were doing it and kind of showing the way. And I just thought, you know what, fantastic, fair play to you, Mandisa. And I thought hold on.
Thank you.
I'm applauding.
Yeah.
Kind of like your effort, because I know it's not been easy for you. I mean, the last kind of few years have been hard.
Yeah,
but
it has.
Making waves now and staying true to your purpose has been, it's awesome, and that's kind of why I salute you.
And in South Africa, Adrian, there's no shortage of business hubs. So there's incubation programs. There's a startup, a growth hub. So there's all of these investments being made on helping these small companies or small businesses to actually come up. But then they're just left like that. So my goal is to really, once they've gone through whatever incubation program they've gone through, or a growth hub, then I will be the one that helps them sustain what has been, because that doesn't get covered in the incubation program. Fortunately now, I must say I was invited to two. The one incubation program received funding from Google, and they've got a cohort of about 34 women in business. And I'll be training them on the 10th of March. I'm running a CX training masterclass for them for about 3 hours. And the Cape Innovation Initiative Technology, they've also asked me to come in again this year to train across the country, and it's specifically women in business as well, in the discipline of customer experience management. So there's an awareness about it. And so there's focus on incubating them, but also bring in that layer which focuses on customer experience management, and as a tool to really sustain the business and to grow the business.
Awesome. So Mandisa, I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and I could talk to you for hours. I really could, but I just wanted to move on to a couple of things, because I wanted to pick your brain on some bigger kind of questions. But before we do that, is there anything else that you'd like to add or highlight that we've missed out? No, we're good.
We're good.
Excellent. So what I want you to do now is sort of change hats and to put on your kind of future peering hat, kind of like as if you're peering off into the distance, because I want to get your perspective on what you think the future of service and experience looks like from your perspective. And then also, what do you think some of the key challenges are that we're going to have to navigate if we are to be successful?
So in terms of the future of service and experience, I was actually reading a report yesterday that was published on consumer trends by Qualtrics. And I also listened to the conversation that Claire had with the women in CX on being able to translate data into actionable insights and actions. So really, for me, the future of service is we have a demanding customer. We have a customer that is looking for that connectedness. And that's as a result of the pandemic. So the customer is no longer at the mercy of the company, of the business. So the future of service is really requiring companies to start getting involved in the detail and not hide behind reports and data and measurements and go around talking about things, but really, really spending some time to understand and build this connectedness with your customers. And I'll tell you another challenge that I find that I believe lies ahead is if companies aren't able to embrace the collective wisdom and power that sits in their customers and their employees, it's a huge recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So that's a key challenge that I see, that not being able to embrace the collective wisdom and power that sits in your customers and employees. And you could also add technology on there as well. But not being able to embrace that, you could actually set yourself up for failing as a brand, where you no longer exist in the next 5 years to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's here, I say to that. It is a big kind of challenge, and actually, I think the pandemic has highlighted. It's forced people to do different things. There's been a massive rush to digital, but actually customer behavior is kind of like has kind of changed, and people are looking kind of for more being more demanding as well. They want those personalized experiences. They want that kind of more empathetic interactions, but companies are just sometimes not keeping up, and with all sorts of rule changes around data and privacy and things kind of going on, it's going to require brands and businesses of all sizes to do different things if they are going to build that connection with their kind of customers, which is going to build that loyalty and that advocacy and that lifetime value.
Yes, fully agree with you.
So thank you for that. That's brilliant. So we talked about a bunch of different things, everything from your journey kind of to CX as an economic development tool to kind of the future and success stories and all these different things now. But I also know that because we've talked about a lot of different things, I think it's somebody that I spoke to the other day that said that CX is complex, but not complicated.
I love that.
Which is, I thought that was brilliant, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to write that down so I remember it. But I was going to say, is like let's boil it down a little bit, and let me ask you to boil it down properly and say, well, Mandisa, given your experience, what would be your best advice to someone listening into this that wants to improve their customer or employee experience?
I would say, and I say it with absolute respect, I would say, and I always say this, I say, don't try to be clever. Do not try to be clever. Everything that you need is right there. You have your customers. There's so much, like I said, collective wisdom that sits with your customers and your people. Everything that you need is right there. So I think now, it is now just go back to basics, because somewhere down the line, the basics have been neglected. And that is where it looks complex, but not complicated, because we've just added layers and layers onto it. Now you have another company coming up and saying there's something called business experience. There's all of these acronyms coming up. Don't try and be clever. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Excellent. I love it. So one final thing, probably a couple of questions just that I always add at the end of each of these interviews. And so just to try and get people's different takes, but also just to have a common end. So I published a collaborative follow-up to Punk CX. That Punk CX came out in 2019, and this new book is called Punk XL. And so I've been asking these kind of questions around Punk CX, and now more recently about Punk XL. I call them longitudinal social research. I say I'm basically picking people's brains, doing a bit of word association. So I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask you, if I may. So the first one is, what one or two words, Mandisa, would you use to describe a more punk approach to customer experience?
A punk approach to customer experience. Look, I have a lot of fun in my work. I have so much fun, I promise you. I think if one gets to that stage of realizing what we are doing as sex professionals and what it does for customers, for employees, and for brands, there's no way you cannot have fun. So I'd say a word to describe punk approach is, look, don't forget to have fun in this. I think some people are just not having fun, and that's why there's so much problems. Another punk approach, another word would be maybe some versatility is quite key. Because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with employees and with customers, you're dealing with people naturally. They are quite complex as people, quite different. So it requires a punk approach would be one that's fun. At the same time, I'd say versatility, just being versatile, I'd say.
Awesome. That's cool. I love it. Fun and versatile. It's great. So the second question I want to ask is to do with this idea of the Punk XL, which XL stands for Experience Leadership, and how actually experience is becoming kind of almost a bigger game. It's no longer sufficient to talk about just customer experience in isolation, and we have to talk about all the different aspects of experience as a domain, and we have to think about it holistically, including customer, employee, leadership, stakeholder, and your sort of bigger impact on the world. So my second question is, what company or brand do you think is an experience leader and why?
I'd say in South Africa, I'd say Capitec Bank for now. And my daughter probably listening to this is probably saying, Mama, no, such hypocrisy. I'd say Capitec Bank. I'll tell you why I say Capitec. They've come and made banking so much accessible and easier. And they've demonstrated to a degree a level of understanding of the dynamics and the nuances of the township market specifically. As much as you would find in some townships that this one branch is still not operating, but I think they've just came and they've woken up all the other banks. You know, they've got a presence everywhere. Besides that, they've made banking smart. You know, customers with Capitec Bank now, they have a black card. Normally a black card with these other big banks is for private clients, you know, with a private banker, with a black card that's embossed. They've come and introduced this slick black card, you know. But besides that, the banking fees are much cheaper and they're quite clear in terms of their customers, the customer, the target market. I know for me specifically, I only have a savings account with them. My check account is with a different bank because they don't have check accounts at Capitec, but they're quite clear in terms of the niche and the market. But they've made banking accessible to a lot of African people in South Africa and accessible through being available geographically and also through technology, but not so complicated. The technology was introduced, but it didn't complicate banking for people.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. What a great kind of like shout out, even though your kind of like daughter might be kind of shouting kind of at you kind of like from her headphones going, Mom, what are you talking about? So Mandisa, thank you for that. That's great. So I always like to get different examples from different sort of people, you know, so they have different things that they can go and different organizations and different examples that they can go and explore as a way of almost like diversifying kind of their pool of inspiration and learning, as it were. So thank you for sharing that. That's great. But that's all I have.
Host.
So that's all I have for us today. And what I want to say, first of all, is like, thank you for sharing your time and your insight and your experience with us today. And also, thank you for the work that you do, because it's important and it matters. And I hope that many people take inspiration for what you're doing, because it deserves it. And I would wish you all the very best in your continued journey. And I'd like to say that if there's anything I can do to be of help or service to you, then you know where I am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adrian. I really enjoyed this. I really laughed this much in the podcast.
Well, thanks very much. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.